Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Harley Seelbinder Podcast, where we cover important topics and ask deep questions. On today's episode, we're talking about the balance between justice and mercy. I talk about the balance between justice and mercy in regards to Christianity and in regards to life in general. It's been something that I've been wrestling with for the past probably 3 months or more, and I just thought I'd do an episode on it. And not every time, but typically when I have an episode that I want to cover, I'll either do some research, find some statistics, or if it's something that's more just, thinking, then I'll just write. And I actually wrote 6 pages worth of notes, and so we're going to go through them. So, there's just this idea in life that you aren't what you could be. And that's true no matter who you are, what age you are, what stage you're at in life. And there's always ways in which we can improve ourselves as humans. I really, really like that idea because it actually shows that we have such a huge amount of potential as humans. It's not like we hit a ceiling and we stagnate. It's every day you can learn something new. Every day you can improve upon something. Every day there's something that you haven't done before that you can do. And it's honestly one of the most beautiful things in life. And sometimes it can get overwhelming. Like, oh, I'm never going to be perfect. I always can improve. There's always going to be something I should be better at. And sometimes that can be a little overwhelming, but I feel like it can be very useful if you use it wisely. And by it, I mean negative feedback / constructive criticism / those kinds of ideas. And I actually live with a guy named Nate, and he's been on the podcast many times. He's a good, deep thinker. And he honestly is motivated by negative criticism quite a lot. One of his jokes / non-jokes is that when he wakes up, he says, "All right, get up, you miserable waste of space. You're pathetic. You gotta get up. Otherwise, you're just gonna be a pathetic person." And, it sounds very harsh, and he does it out of love, honestly, because I think he loves himself in a truer sense than a lot of people say they love themselves, because he actually notices that his present self isn't as great as his future self could be. And, recognizing that, right now I'm not where I could be and I could be better. And just that constant attempt to better and update yourself. I think that's why he says that. And I've talked with some other people, my counselor. He was saying that, sometimes a little bit too much negative feedback can be a con. And yeah, sure, that's probably true, because if you're constantly self-denigrating yourself and, telling yourself that you're weak or telling yourself that you aren't good, you might actually stagnate yourself, and you might actually start to believe that, and you might actually really maybe plateau because you're like, man, yeah, really, I am pretty rough. Oh, I'm a piece of crap, and then you might shame or whatever might rip you down. And, that's where there's a balance to these types of things. But it seems as if in today's culture, we don't typically give people enough tough love and enough judgment that cares about their future self. And it's this idea that too much self-denigration and too much constructive criticism and too much critiquing can be detrimental, but small amounts in calculated doses really can improve a person's state and, might help them see their potential. And it kind of ties into this episode that I literally just did last week, which is on the biohacking methods to live a longer, healthier life. And the term I'm talking about there is called hormesis. And hormesis is just short doses of stress that you can handle, but, you're stressing yourself. And, that's kind of the idea that I get when I think of, I need to critique myself in short bits every once in a while. A little kick in the pants can actually be motivating because you're like, what did you do with yourself today? You could have done a little bit better there. What were the implications of you not doing this or doing that when you shouldn't have, or any of those things? And in my opinion, having that little bit of harsh criticism for yourself is really, really useful. And having people that around you that can give you that criticism is super useful too. And that's why I think God in the Bible and other gods and other mythologies sometimes are painted with a hand of justice and a hand of mercy. And having too much justice or too much mercy, like we said, can be counterproductive and not really maximize the potential of the person. And in my opinion, this is my opinion, I think Christians these days view God as an all-loving, very just God who cares about all his children and who, gave his son for us and should be celebrated, and it's he loves you no matter what, all of these things. And I think that side of God is important, whatever that means. But I also know that without a little bit of justice, saying that, you're calling yourself a Christian, there's a few things that you should update before you should proclaim that to everyone. Because, you have some planks in your eye you should pull out before you're willing to just say you believe, or willing to say that you're a Christian, or say that Jesus is the top of your ideal. And I think the point here is that every single person has different standards for themselves and others. And some people place themselves to a higher standard than others. And in my opinion, that's somewhat what a person's God or ideal is. Whatever you raise to the highest importance happens to be whatever you believe in, or whatever your God is. And, there's different examples in our 21st century life which kind of show, like, I was talking to this guy named George Cisneros, and he was saying that his God on Sundays was watching football. He couldn't wait for it during the week. That was the thing he looked forward to. He'd spend 3, maybe 6 hours on the couch cheering on his favorite team. And then he had a realization, like, in my hierarchy, football seems to be higher than maybe learning more about God, learning more about religion, maybe even hanging out with family or talking with my kids. And he was like, wow, that was actually my God, because, that was at the top of his hierarchy of importance. And I feel like when you talk about religion in general, when people talk about what their God is, what I think of is whatever they've placed at the hierarchy, at the pinnacle of the hierarchy of importance that they have. What is the most important thing in their life? What do their actions show is the most important thing in their life? And, a lot of people say, well, I love Jesus and I'm so thankful for him and I have a great relationship with him. But then they might spend 60 minutes a week, at church, maybe worshiping God, celebrating God, and, talking about Jesus. But then the rest of their 6,660 minutes, the rest of the week in which they're awake, I calculated how many minutes each person is awake in a day, and it's 666. Let's take a look. I have it pulled up. It is 6,720 minutes we're awake in a week. And you take off 60 minutes from that while being at church, and the rest of those 6,660 minutes, I feel like a lot of Christians are spending, doing whatever they really want to do. And, maybe sometimes one person's pinnacle or ideal or hierarchy of importance is, watching funny videos on Instagram or TikTok. Another's might be hitting the gym. Another's might be going snowboarding or maybe working at a business. And, I fall victim to the same thing. I spend a lot of my time working, at my mom's business and working on this podcast. And, I'd say one of my hierarchies of importance is constantly learning more about business, life, religion, relationships, etc. That's one of my main goals in life, is to every day learn something more, every week be different than the week I was before, and see that slope and over the long term. And that's what I try to, in my actions, have my hierarchy of importance be. But I don't typically claim out loud that I am a Christian or I have a great relationship with Jesus, because I don't even really think that shows much. I think it's the looking into the Gospels. It's the wrestling with different people. It's the listening to atheists and trying to figure out where their holes might be in their argument. And I think that is what truly shows if you're a Christian or not. A lot of people are claiming that Jesus is at their hierarchy of importance. And in my mind, if Jesus was at the hierarchy of importance for someone, Jesus would be watching and looking down on you the entire time. Certainly, he's going to have the loving and encouraging and affirming side that says, you're flawed. You can't do it without others. You can't do it without me. I forgive you for that. You are an amazing person. You have the spark of the divine inside of you. But on the other hand, he's going to be looking down at every action of yours, saying, he just claimed himself to be a Christian, but then he acted in that way. He said something that isn't true. He didn't take on responsibility for what he did. Or, anything someone might do. I feel like these days, Christians have this, well, this is my opinion. I feel like when I was claiming to be a Christian, I recognized the little loophole that was placed in a religion where the idea is that, it's all loving, saving grace, full of mercy. You could kind of act like you wanted, act how you wanted, and then at the end of the day, you take the Jesus forgiveness pill, and then you can have all of those things be reconciled. And this is a straw man, of course, because I guess the idea here is, hopefully, if you're sitting down to confess to Jesus or to God your sins and that you want to be forgiven, hopefully there's been a reconciliation and you're actually attempting to not ever have that happen again. And that's why I think that side of it is so important, the forgiveness, the mercy, etc. But I do think these days that Christianity and just universities and just the experience that I've had growing up, I feel like people are not as hard on themselves or as others as they could be. And I think it's yielding people who don't see a need to maybe improve. You're perfect the way you are. You don't need to improve. God loves you. You're amazing. Don't change anything about you because you are magnificent. You are a masterpiece of God. And like I keep saying, there's a whole balance. I don't mind some of that. But when there isn't but, you have some things to work on. I saw you were, whatever it might be. And that's just kind of what I'm getting at for this whole discussion. I feel like sometimes people view, like, we live in this society that says, oh, you're like I just said, you're perfect the way you are. Block out all the haters. If anyone's giving you hate, just tune them out, because haters, whatever, I don't even know what the phrase is, but haters stay away or whatever. And I'm sometimes like totally fine, depending on what you mean by hater. As a person who has a podcast, sometimes comments on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or whatever are pretty harsh, and they're like, wow, who's this kid talking? Or look at it. He doesn't even know how to wear a tie or whatever. I'm used to seeing the criticism. And in my opinion, sometimes people truly are just writing a comment out of hate and their only desire is to make the person's day worse and to, put someone down. And that's their main objective. And, that could be classified as hate. And sure, it's useful if you can, hear that and then continue walking. If you can brush that off and be like, well, hopefully, probably they're saying that because they have a hole inside themselves and they probably need some love, or, you recognize that, maybe if I'm a bigger person and, forgive them and try to love them back, it might make their day so much better. But then sometimes there's actual critiques in life. Someone says, yo, Harley, in your thumbnail, it looks like your tie, you don't even know how to wear a tie. It's so crooked. And then I heard someone else say, yeah, your thumbnails are pretty plain, and I don't think they suck people in. And other people say that, maybe my podcast name is just not, it doesn't captivate people, and it's not it's not a title that people remember. And all of these things are critiques that I'm like, maybe I could improve. And, I took that thumbnail one to heart. I actually adjusted the tie. Now it's all straight, and, I made it look way better. And I'm like, thanks for the critique. And whatever. The point of this is that people need to learn how to take criticisms and give criticisms to themselves while also recognizing the achievements you have obtained and the value you have and the beauty you have as a human. And because critiques are incredibly optimistic. There's this side point that I wanted to bring up when talking about this. Some people might not like that I bring it up, but that's kind of the point of this episode. Important topics that people don't like to discuss. So this is on gay and lesbian parenting. And there's this old idea that, a father and a mother bound by marriage is the best environment for a child to grow up in. And people like me might wonder why. Why is that the case? And there's so many reasons probably why that's the case, but one reason might be is that, you have that stability. As a kid, you have the stability of constant one or two same role models in your life. There isn't constant switching. You know who to look up to. You don't have to reform a deep relationship with a caregiver, etc. But I feel like in regards to the point I'm trying to make, fathers and mothers have different characteristics. Typically, men are more disagreeable than women, and women are typically more compassionate than men. And, someone might say, that's a huge generalization, that's sexist. Okay, I'd like you to look at the psychology literature on the personality traits of men and women, and how there's a bell curve for men and women showing where, the majority of men and women lie along the different spectrums of personality. And typically, men are a bit more disagreeable and women are a bit more compassionate. Certainly, there's going to be people with different temperaments, and sometimes I know women that are incredibly disagreeable. My girlfriend is an example. I know men that are pretty compassionate. I am an honest example. I'm pretty compassionate. And, there's overlap all the time. But it seems as if that combination that has been around for thousands of years of a man and a woman having children, the woman is incredibly great when the baby is born to be an encouraging nurturer and a person who is willing to accept the baby of all their flaws and, help out no matter what and love and give 110% and forgive and everything. And that's important, especially when the child's young. But then I feel like as the child starts to grow up and learn a little bit more about their life, their actions, the impact that they have, the importance of the butterfly effect, I feel like it's useful to have two sides. Well, Jimmy, you are such a beautiful kid. I love you so much. You have so much potential. You've achieved so much. I'm very proud of you. But I see that sometimes you aren't trying your best in school, and I'm trying to wonder why, because if you waste your potential now in school, you could end up down a path that you don't like, or a path that you might regret. And, I really recommend that you try a little harder, because your future self will like you and will thank you, and etc. That's just an example I have in my head, but it's useful to have that both sides. And this is sometimes the question that I might bring up to someone who's gay or lesbian. I don't necessarily have a big problem if two people want to get married, gay or lesbian, but I'm like, your actions have insanely huge impact, and you might not realize that as an individual, but other people look up to you. Your hypothetical children truly look up to you. And the question I would just ask is, do you think having 2 men or 2 women parents is missing any characteristics that a heterosexual parent environment could bring to the table? And, it's different for every individual circumstance. Like I said, Rachel and I kind of are different in the example I gave. So it's like I'm somewhat compassionate and she's somewhat disagreeable, but we both can be disagreeable and compassionate. So yeah, but this is a question I feel like any couple, gay, straight, anything, they should be asking this question. Do we have the correct capacities to give justice and mercy to our children? And, some people call Jordan Peterson homophobic or transphobic, and I don't really fully know what those words mean because they aren't really truly defined, but Jordan Peterson had Dave Rubin on, who is he's a gay political commentator. Like, he talks about politics on his show. He happens to be gay, but he also realizes that, hey, having 2 men raise a child, it's going to be missing characteristics that, I can't control, such as, the motherly child bond, like the breast milk bond, all of these things. There's so many, like the touch between mother and child. There's psychological reasons why you need the child needs the mother. And, it's like, so how do you have that happen if you have 2 men? And, what about formula? And, just there's 100 things you have to kind of jump through and ask the question of for any straight or gay parent. But, this is just Harley talking about LGBTQ, willing to give critiques and, show the pros and cons of things, because I'm willing to dive into these things. That's my goal with this podcast. And yeah, that was an interesting political tangent about LGBTQ, but the main point of this episode is I feel like Christians these days, they say that Jesus is their savior. They say they love Jesus so much. They say that they're a Christian, but then Jesus doesn't seem to be that judge that's sitting up there judging the good and evil traits of you. And it doesn't seem like you're looking up and trying to really ask the question, could I be better? What am I messing up on? And I guess that's what this topic's about. I've kind of went back and forth throughout my notes, and yeah, like one thing I heard someone say is that I feel like churches make it seem so easy to become a believer. It's like, just walk right in. Come on in. We all love you. Just take this one step. It's a simple step, and you can be into the kingdom of heaven forever. All you need is just one little step of, saying you believe, and I'm here for you. I'm praying that you reach this decision. I'm here for you. And in my opinion, like I've been saying, if you're willing to make the claim that Jesus is at the top of your hierarchy of importance, or is your God, or is your ideal that you're trying to strive for, then great. I have no problem you saying that and saying that, Jesus is who I look up to. I'm trying to emulate Jesus. There's one guy named Jonathan Paju he lives in Toronto, I think, or he's somewhere from Canada, and he's an icon carver. He carves out icons of the Bible and creates art from the Bible. And he also has a YouTube channel where he talks about religion and life, and he looks at it through a symbolic perspective a lot of the time. And well, I heard him say quite a few times that he feels that Christians don't typically try to define what worship is. They'll say all the time, "Oh, it's time to worship. It's time to sing. Let's praise God and worship Him because He's so amazing." And it's like, yeah, we're using this word worship, but right when I was young, or pretty recently, I've always equated worship and singing. Like, oh, if you worship something in a Christian context, you're singing and praising and celebrating about it, and that's pretty close. But Paju says that what he feels like a practical definition to give to wisdom is whatever you celebrate and emulate. It's like I was saying before, if you truly worship Jesus, then you're going to celebrate all of the positive aspects about him and the implications of the actions that he acted out. And you're also going to emulate to the best of your ability to be like him and to, love people like he did and tell people the truth, even when it's hard. And, that's what I feel like it truly means to worship Jesus and to worship God. And I just don't think people in church hear this side of the message. They hear it's so easy to be a believer. Why don't you take that step? Drink that glass. Drink that communion cup. Come on, be like Jesus. And I'm like, you're not going to be like Jesus until you start celebrating and emulating in as many actions as possible the actions he did. And that's why I did that episode on learning humility from Jesus. And someone might say, okay, I don't really care about that episode. And I'm like, well, that's how I truly try to learn more about Jesus and to try to emulate him. It's like Jesus lived on this earth and he acted out actions. There's stories about him. And apparently he is now the ideal that so many people worship. And if he's the ideal, why not look at the different characteristics he acted out? He was humble. He was truth-bearing. He helped heal those that were sick and needy. He gave to those who were in need. He was willing to criticize the people in power who were wrong. All of these things. That's what I feel like a person who is a Christian should act like. And when people ask, so are you a Christian? I will say, I try my best to act as if Jesus is watching my every movement and try to act and emulate Jesus' actions. My goal is to make the world a better place in what I say and what I do. And hopefully that is a good enough answer and life for Jesus to accept. And, that's what I like to look at when I look at Christianity, because we are what we do, we are what we say, but it's got to be integrated. And like I was saying before, you could say you're a Christian for 60 minutes of the week, but then for 6,000 minutes of the week, you're focusing on other things. And I feel like that's disingenuous. My goal is typically not to say that I'm a Christian because it comes with connotations. Some people who are skeptical will write me off. Some people who are fully all in will celebrate me and be so happy about it, but they won't really learn that much about me until I define what I mean by try to emulate Jesus, try to celebrate the good that he's done, and try to celebrate the Judeo-Christian values that have been passed down and that have yielded some of the most prosperous, free societies in human history. That's why I love Jesus, because, acting out those principles leads to a better life, one that makes God smile, hopefully. And this is a long episode on me talking about my opinions of Christianity, but every week I learn a little bit more and more. And I actually got criticized on my last episode about faith, and honestly, I agree with some of the criticisms, but this is my point. They might say, oh, you didn't say it correctly, or the Bible might say something differently, and I'm like, perfect. I'm down to be criticized. This whole point of this is to give me some justice, smack me, tell me I'm doing something wrong. But no matter if I made a mistake or not in episode 18, I still learned so much, and those criticisms helped me learn. And hopefully, because I made that episode, they were forced to think about what I'm talking about. And, you know, that's my goal. I want people to update their mental maps and become better people by thinking and learning more about the world and themselves. And I guess I might get critiques for this episode too and say, hey, this verse says this, which contradicts what you say. And I'm like, perfect. I didn't even think of that verse. Thanks so much for telling me. Bring it on. I'm totally down to have a discussion. And I guess I'll just end this podcast by, you know, talking about the importance of mercy, encouragement, and affirmation. Because, you know, I've talked so much about my bias towards justice and like being hard on someone and saying that, you know, you aren't who you could be a lot more. I believe in your potential. But there's a whole nother side, the mercy side. And I'm going to make it short because I feel like a lot of people use mercy and have mercy in their actions and lives. But for example, my mom and my girlfriend sometimes get tired of my constant critiques about myself and them. They feel sometimes I'm too critical or too negative and that I'm not recognizing the positives that they are doing or the achievements they have obtained. And I'm like, totally fair enough. Thanks for telling me, because I fall victim to setting such high standards for everyone, especially the people I truly know and care about. And actually, just last night, I wrote this long letter to my mom explaining all the attributes that I like about her and that I'm grateful for, and etc. And the reason why I sometimes critique, and that it's out of love, and that I just want the best for us all. And, you know, I wrote a similar thing to my girlfriend saying how much I love what I like about her, what I appreciated about her, and all of these things. And both of those letters had positive reactions. And I was like, okay, Harley, that's just perfect evidence that shows that you need justice and mercy in pretty much everything, whether it be Christianity, life, anything. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you think, and be sure to deal some justice and mercy to yourself and others. Thanks for tuning in to the Harley Seelbinder Podcast, where deep questions are asked. If this podcast impacted you positively, be sure to share it with your friends, for I'm sure it will impact them positively as well. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.